everyone. Today is November 30th, 2019, and this is the Duel Assessment, your podcast for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. My name is Green Ranger, and this week we are wrapping up the end of the Kaiba Cup. We're going to talk about, Kaiba Cup's been over a few days, but we're going to talk about some of the top decks, my own experiences, some of the main topics that have arisen from the Kaiba Cup, some of the implications, and what has not been done so far. I guess that everyone knows what has not been done, but we'll just wrap up this very interesting Kaiba Cup. It's probably one of the ones that I played the most in, I think, probably. That leads us to the podcast question of the week. What archetype is the winner of the Kaiba Cup? We'll talk about that, what everyone thinks. Esports, of course, the Kaiba Cup wrap-up. Duel Links meta as well. Some skill rebalancing, that's kind of the fallout from the Kaiba Cup, sort of. We have some new cards, 4 new cards from this week, 2 from the Tag Duel Tournament, 2 from Alluring Alexis. That's about it. A lot going on this week, mostly in the new cards and whatnot. So let's talk about myself. I actually earned the WCS 2020 Regional Representative Qualifier Eligibility A, and by doing that, you just have to place in the top 500 of your region. And I was one of the ones near the end. I forget what the cutoff was, but I had a DP of 23,870 and global rank 5,354, 62% win rate with Invoked. Played close to 80 games, something like 70 something. And really, I know I was ahead sometimes, and I didn't want to fight too many games so I could lose and fall back. Occasionally I checked the scores, and I realized I had to duel again to increase the cushion, if you will, and I did do that a few times. I think the latest one I played was like 10:30, before 11:30, and I won that game, and I knew I had a cushion good enough for that top 500 at that point. And talk about my experiences playing it later, but it was definitely the most involved meta. There was definitely a meta. You definitely get to see what the top decks are. There's not many meme decks running around to surprise you, rogue decks, anything like that. There were a few, of course, but not too many. So a lot of them were just invoked mirror matches. And if, this is the deck. It wasn't the best invoked deck, but it was one of the ones running around. Is the pure invoked deck, the synchro one. The goblin, scrap goblin into your level 4. You blow up the board with Black Rose Dragon, and then you play Evoked Magellanica with what was in your graveyard. That was the main deck, and Sorcery Conduit, of course, made it all work out. As for last night, and subsequently after the Kaiba Cup, I did hit King of Games. I got my last day King of Games. I got it this morning. Late at night. So November 30th, 2019, King of Games. Bandit Synchro Vampires. I think I've done it before with them. Maybe 2 months ago. I don't remember. I didn't hit King of Games last month. Maybe a few months before, but I did it. And I must admit, I drank a lot to get through some things, so I was drunk, and I was playing a lot of meme decks, so some combination of all that made it work out. Of course, there was setup to get to ranked 2 ahead of time, I think. I was ranked 1 at a certain point, and then I remember playing the Invoke deck and stuff, but then I went back to Vampires, and this Bandit version, worked out fine. If anyone's interested in the deck list, I've talked about it before, but let's hear it again. Bandit, of course. If you have 1,500 life points or less, you steal the opponent's back row without them activating it. And pretty easy to do with Vampires. If people play around you, they know not to hit you below 1,500, but at the point I was playing at yesterday, people didn't know to do that, so they let me steal their back row. 2 Gazuki, 1 Plague Spreader Zombie. Plague Spreader allows you to get into your synchro plays, of course, as well as being an extra body on the board when you need to tribute summon. 2 Vampire Retainer, 2 Vampire Familiar, 1 Vampire Vamp, 2 Vampire Grace, 3 Samurai Skull, 2 Vampire Kingdom, 2 Econ, 1 Vampire's Desire, 1 Vampire's Domain, 1 Vampire Takeover, and 3 Simultaneous Loss. This is the card that kind of makes the deck. It's the wild card of the deck. You don't really need it, but I found the extra removal, like removing them twice a turn, to be pretty solid with Grace. And then the Synchro deck, it was pretty much just one card in the Synchro deck that did all the work. There's Scrap Dragon, Armadides, Hyper Psychic Riser, Gigantic Castle, Samurai Destroyer, and then the card that did all the work, Revived King Hades. It was nice. It was nice countering stuff like Blue Eyes stuff. It was typically Blue Eyes stuff. At the time I was playing, it was Yubel stuff. You know, they're destroying these things, and they tried to activate their effects in the graveyard, and it didn't work. That's the tricky thing about Revived King Hades. He lets you try to activate the effect, but then it doesn't work. So it's like shutting them down twice. But anyways, that was my King of Games deck, and there's not really anything to it. Late season King of Games is pretty easy, and I was just happy to get those 200 gems, really. Moving up next month doesn't really matter, but it is what it is. So Doug Dimmadule is in Disney World right now. So I'm going to talk about what he did last week. He played in the Kaiba Cup, of course. He had a really good win rate. He had 77% win rate while playing Blackwings. He talked about this deck as a deck of the week before, sort of a budgety Blackwing deck. 77% win rate, DP of 22,753. I think he just missed the top 500 cutoff for Region A. I'm not positive. I think he said he missed off, but it was very close, and he just couldn't put enough games into it. With a 77% win rate, you could get a lot of points. Let's talk about his deck. He's mentioned it before. Harpy's Hunting Ground Blackwing deck. 3, I don't really know the cards' names. The Wind guy, Poisonous Wind guy. Simoon the Poisonous Wind. 2 Zephyros the Elite. 2 Bora the Spear. 2 Gale the Whirlwind. 3 Chris the Crack of Dawn. 1 Breeze the Zephyr. 2 Orochi the Squall. 3 Black Whirlwind, and 3 Blackbird Close. So this is kind of like an older version. It relies on the counter trap, of course. And in the extra deck, he has a Black Winged Dragon, 2 Chidori the Rain Sparkling, 2 Rikiri the Rain Shower, and 1 Sanaya the Rainstorm. Really tested my eyesight there with those card names. Because I don't play Blackwings, I don't really know the names, frankly. But I know what they do. So that is Doug Dimmadule's deck, his Blackwing deck. Seems like he can still play the deck. It hasn't been nerfed, so he still has plenty of longevity to build on Blackwings. So that is us about the members of the Duel Assessment Week in the Duel World. And let's begin with the podcast question of the week. It's typically something we don't begin with, but it makes sense now. What archetype or deck was the winner of the KC Cup? If you played any of the KC Cup, you'll kind of know what decks showed up the most. But was it the winner? It's hard to say. There could have been a deck that took first place, and it was kind of a weird deck, unexpected deck. But I think we all have a consensus here. 67% said Invoked, Element Saber. They won the Kaiba Cup. 6% said Dark Lords. 18% said Black Wings. 9% said Ritual Beasts. Yeah, I mean, going in before Invoked took over, Dark Lords were the clear favorite. They were the favorite for a bit. And then they just fell off the map. I feel like I did face enough Dark Lords. I did face them. And they're getting hit from nerf, so it's kind of weird where they weren't the best deck in the Kaiba Cup, and then the ones getting nerfed, not Invoked. It's kind of strange. Pro Benchwarmer and I had a little discussion. He says, it's just Invoked. It's such a strong engine, fits into a good handful of archetypes, elements, sabers, magicians, roids, even in Sylvans. and encourages Unga Bunga since Alistair is a one-card engine like Amazon's Princess. Both Alistair and Invocation are box URs, so I don't know how they would rein the deck in. I said I'm fine with them not nerfing the deck just yet since that box is fairly recent, but it will give something to deal with down the line. There should be some reasonable compensation in gems for people who owned nerf copies of cards as who can't convert them. Pro Benchwarmer says, I don't think compensation is an idea we should get acquainted with since it's the least likely to happen. I think a major quality of life improvement would be having the card trader convert cards for gems. That way, players can rid themselves of useless cards and gain better currency. So this is kind of like we've gone full circle. Deck Tech, former host of this podcast, he was a Hearthstone guy. I mean, he's all into Hearthstone. And Hearthstone was one of the first games. I think it was the leading digital card game at the time it came out. It still is like the main digital card game. And the thing about converting a card into arcane dust. And now every subsequent digital card game has that system, except for Duel Links. And me and him went back and forth about why Duel Links doesn't have that. You can convert the card, sure, but you get these things that are kind of useless, like Stone of whatever. The Archetype Stone and the Rarity Stone or something. And pretty much useless currency, a little better than gold. And the only reason we could come up with is that Konami likes being different. Yu-Gi-Oh! Likes being different. And, I don't know if they'll ever come, frankly. I mean, they've taken steps to making... It's like the card trader system isn't complete. It would be better if it was more complete, but it's not. And everyone's hoping for it. I think it's something that everyone does want to be able to do. Even getting, like, gems out of a card instead of crafting a card. Crafting a card could be a bit too much. They might want you to open packs and get the cards and things like that, but I don't know. You nerf a card and then you can't use it again. What's the point? It's digital. It's not like you could show it off in your collection, right? It's like it's worthless once a card gets nerfed. So we don't really know what's going to happen with Invoked. Hard to say. Into the Kaiba Cup in Esports this week. Over the top decks. Okay. First place is -1. Well-known player. A player of the Duel Links meta community. I'm not sure if he's the top player council. I don't know who's in the top player council. He's not a ton, but yeah, he is top player council. So, his first place deck, Sorcerer Conduit, Element Saber Invoked, 65% win rate, 482 duels. Strongest deck in the meta right now, I'd say. Sorcery Conduit, 1,000 life point activation, 3 Cosmic Cyclone will make that happen. And you have 3 Alistair in this deck as well for the consistency, the hand consistency, hand buff, and also getting Invocation. There's 3 Malehus in this deck. Element Saber Malehu is pretty much regarded as the Element Saber you run in the deck. Doesn't matter attributes because they change their attributes in the graveyard. So, strongest one, and he has the ability, pretty much a free Paleozoic Canadian once per turn, which is very good. There's also like a toolbox here. There's 1 of each Element Saber. There's 1 Lapula, 1 Malo, and 1 Nalu. You typically see the other ones. The fire and the water one you typically see sometimes. The light one you typically don't see. It's pretty good though. It's a 2100 defender. Lets you negate a spell or trap once per turn by sending an Element Saber from your hand to the graveyard. It's pretty good. The other ones, Malo lets you send stuff into the graveyard. Nalu, not really sure what that does, but anyways, the deck also has 3 of the field spell, Palace of the Element Lords. There's 1 copy of Elemental Training. This is a really good trap card from what I've seen in the duels against them. And then 2 Treacherous Trap Hole fill out the semi-limit zone. In a deck like this, I think instead of the pure Invoked deck relies a lot on Magellanica, but this one probably involves Purgatrio a ton, and Purgatrio just came out. Second place, Vino, Sealed Tomb's Black Wings. This is far from an expensive deck. This is a very budget Blackwing deck. And I guess it shows that the best Blackwing deck was not very expensive at all. 3 Simoon the Poison Wind, of course. 2 Zephyros the Elite. 1 Gale the Whirlwind. 1 Panaki the Waxing Moon. 3 Chris the Crack of Dawn. 1 Breeze the Zephyr. 1 Harmattan the Dust. 1 Orochi the Squall. 2 Black Whirlwind. 1 Cosmic Cyclone. 2 Offerings to the Doomed. 2 Treacherous Trap Hole. So, what I mean by this deck isn't too expensive is it didn't involve you buying that old box Blackwing Rising a ton. There's no Board of the Spear in this deck. There's only 2 Black Whirlwind, but I think that is intentional, though. Black Whirlwind is a card you probably don't need a 3 of. Panaki the Waxing Moon is seeing play as a budget Gale the Whirlwind. They're both level 3 tuners. Breeze the Zephyr is also a level 3 tuner, so I'm not sure which one's more budget, but that is the deck. Offerings to the Doom, though, that's a new development that Blackwing decks are emulating. They just gain so much card advantage, it doesn't matter if they draw the next turn. If they skip the draw phase. That's the card for removal. Treacherous Trap Hole as well. Third place, Raw. Raw played 2 Invoked decks. One is a Roid Invoked deck, and one is a Element Saber Invoked deck. The Roid Invoked deck, 3 Alistair, 1 Submarine, 2 Kite Roid, 1 Rescue Roid, 1 Truck Roid, 3 Cosmic, 2 Invocation, 3 Concentrating Current, 3 Megaroid City, 1 Cursed Seal of the Forbidden Spell. So, Kite Roid was one of the biggest splashes in the Kaiba Cup, and the advantage of playing in Roids is that Megaroid City can search it, so you can get in your hand whatever you want. It's a Wind, though, so Wind doesn't fit with Invoked at the moment. It doesn't matter, I guess. Submarine Roid is probably the best Roid you would run. It's a Water 2. It's got 1800 defense, which is a 2600 direct attacker with Concentrating Current, so there's a second threat in the deck. Rescue Roid and Truck Roid pretty much exist for the fusions. And then Sorcerer Conduit, Element Saber. This is a version you've seen more of probably. There's only one of each Element Saber. 1 Malehu, 1 Malo, 1 Nalu, and 1 Aina. They all kind of fit the attributes for fusing the Invoked. And this deck runs notably 3 copies of Forbidden Lance, which lets one monster lose 800 attack, but then it's unaffected by other spells or traps. I think this is a main counter for Concentrating Current. Prevent that monster from hitting for game. They lose extra attack as well, 800 attack, and then they don't get affected by the Concentrating Current. And then Grucius, 4th place. Let's see what he did. Sorcerer Conduit, Roid Invoked. Both of them were Roid Invoked decks, pretty much the same thing. They just switched out Econ and Treacherous Trap Hole in the semi-limit list. Pretty much the same deck. You got 3 Alistair, 1 Drill Roid, that's an Earth attribute, I guess. 1 Submarine Roid, 1 Kite Roid, 1 Rescue Roid. 3 Cosmic, 2 Invocation, 3 Concentrating Current, 3 Megaroid City. So Roids really just came out of the blue. I think Kite Roid definitely bolstered it. Kite Roid synergy with Megaroid City. That pushed Roids all the way to the top. And you know what? Roids are a super cheap deck. They're all free cards pretty much. You just have to get your Alistairs, of course, your Cosmics, your Currents, your Invocation. But the other cards are pretty much free. And you have to have the fusions, of course, Invoked fusions. Alright. Those are the top 4. So, playing in the Kaiba Cup and knowing about it, Invoked were everywhere. A lot of people were just playing my version because they couldn't afford Element Sabers like myself. And playing the pure Invoked mirror was a lot of fun, I must admit. They put their face down card down, it's either a water monster or a scrap goblin. or confronting a retaliating C, something like that. Kind of like, when do I play my Coxidus? When do I play my Magellonica? I didn't have Purgatrio, so I didn't have that option. I did play Kaliga a few times, but I think that lost me the game more often than not. And there's a lot of Cosmic Cyclone chaining into Invocation. I was definitely a play I saw a ton in the mirror. They knew they needed to banish my Invocation, so I couldn't get it the next turn. And I was a guy who only ran 2 Invocation, 2 Alistair, so I was short a card in general. Of course, Concentrating Currents were everywhere. That was a card, they had a pause before they attacked, or, a pauses in general, they had a Concentrating Current card that's everywhere now. I think we're going to see something down the line with that, but we'll see. Not yet. What else? I talked about this before, but I always do the Greedy Cosmic Cyclone play on my own trap cards to get Sorcery Conduit activated if my opponent didn't play the back row. Yeah, that's what I have to say about Invoked. It was just everywhere. Kiteroid and Roids. Kiteroid, they released 2 of them with that event. Everyone got it. I think it's the tour guide event, and 2 copies of Kiteroid. That was another card you saw a lot. It could have been the most common monster. I think it is. Decks just ran it. Didn't matter if it was a stall deck or not. Stall decks definitely ran it. Regular decks ran it. It was super annoying. It slowed down the game. And I think that was intentional. They wanted to slow down the game. That's why they gave it to us. I personally did not run Kiteroid. I wasn't playing Broid Invoked, so I had no reason to do it. So I didn't do it. But it was everywhere. And sometimes you had to synchro into a monster that would get by that effect, or you would have to clear their graveyard or something, find some way to clear their graveyard, I don't know. But Kiteroids are everywhere. I don't think I actually played against a real Roid deck. I may have played against a Roid Invoked deck, but it wasn't as common. It was sort of the sneaky play that the top players found to be good. Disconnects were still a problem. Me and Doug Dimmadil were talking about it online. I think I disconnected like 5 times. And a lot of them, most of them were at home at this computer where I was wired down. I don't know if my internet sucks or what, but I disconnected 5 times. Sometimes I just willed my computer back into internet, and that was good. My opponent disconnected like probably 3 times, 2-3 times. So it goes both ways. I don't know if it'll ever be fixed, frankly. Duel Links being a mobile game, I don't know how to do it. Or maybe it would soften the blow if disconnect losses lost you fewer points. Like you lost very few points from it instead of losing 1,000. That probably would fix it if they can't fix the disconnects. When the disconnects were happening at first, I swore everyone was cheating. I thought everyone had a cheat tool in. At this point, I just think my internet sucks, or their internet sucks, and something went wrong. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I think now. My last point about the Kaiba Cup is there was almost an immediate skill rebalance. Some skills were just nerfed or buffed right away, pretty much a week after the Kaiba Cup. And I don't know if this was planned by Konami to begin with. I think it was, because if they nerfed based on the results of the Kaiba Cup, Invoked probably would be gone already. But I think it's too early for Invoked to be nerfed. Of course, since Purgatrio just came out, and those 2 cards are URs in the box, they have to let the game. They have to let Invoked play a little bit before they take it away. I mean, Cyber Angels played for like a year before they went away, so I don't know about that, but we don't know how long Invoked has in the game or how they're going to rebalance it. Maybe they're going to try to put some new cards out right now to do it, but we'll see how long it goes. But skills were nerfed right away, and interestingly, Sorcery Conduit was not hit. That was a card that was a skill that recently got buffed with the last patch. Over the summer, I think they buffed a few skills, and Sorcery Conduit was the beneficiary. And it went from 1,800 life point loss to 1,000, I think, and that really helped them for Invoked with Cosmic Cyclone for sure. Alright, let's talk about Duel Links Meta Weekly 100, the first Duel Links Meta tournament after the Kaiba Cup. In this tournament, Element Saber, Invoked are pretty much the main deck. Invoked, pretty much continuation of the Kaiba Cup, are the main deck. Element Saber is the main archetype. Pure Invoked still exists, as well as Magician Girls and Droids. Magician Girls you didn't really see them in the top 4 or whatever in the Kaiba Cup stats, but you definitely faced them a lot in the Kaiba Cup when you did see them. And I'm sure they're going to be still quite a competitive deck moving forward, as Chocolate Magician Girl is a pretty good card herself. You don't really need to run Mirror Wall as a result of having that card. And then it mixes well with the various fusion cards you could play. So first place is Raw. Raw was third place in the Kaiba Cup, so he pretty much took it back. Got some redemption here. And this is Element Saber Invoked. There's still some experimentation with the main type, and he ran 2 Forbidden Lance and 1 Forbidden Chalice, so he's mixing around the Forbidden cards. And then the monsters are a bit undecided still. He has 2 Malehu, 1 Malo, and 1 Nalu. Of course, with Sorcerer Conduit, you still run the 3 Cosmic Cyclones, 3 Alistair, 2 Invocation, 3 Field Spell, 2 Treacherous Trap Hole. Treacherous Trap Hole has pretty much cemented itself as a pretty good choice in that slot. Or you could swap it off with Econ. Of course, you have to run 2, or you could do the 1-1 split, maybe. I don't know. Second place, Wayne Kenoff. Transcendent Crystals, Kristrons. It seems like this guy always hits with Kristrons like a pretty good placement every week, like a second place. A lot of Duel Links Meta weeklies. It's a sneaky good deck that it's not everywhere on the ladder. It's not tiered on their tier list, but it just steals a lot of games. But this deck, just like a big deck, of course. You got a lot of pieces in it, cards you want to dispose of. 2 Pulse Mines, of course. The tech card here is Spell Vanishing. It's a counter trap. Discard 2 cards from your hand, negate the activation of a spell, destroy it, look at your opponent's hand or deck, and then send them all to the graveyard. So, this is a counter against Invocation, of course. And then it also benefits Kristrons. You discard 2 cards from your hand. So, this lets you dump those monsters into the graveyard so their effects work. So it's similar to Cursed Seal of the Forbidden Spell, but this is specifically for deck disposal. It would be decent in Vampires too, I think. Vampires are another archetype that likes putting stuff in the graveyard, so here we go. This is a card you definitely consider. There's a lot of N rarity cards from old boxes. This is an N rarity from Crimson Kingdom that you just forget that they exist. And it's amazing that you just dig it out, and it's amazing against Invocation. Third place, Lunds. Draw Sense High Level, Spiritual Beasts with Plasma. This is pretty much the first style of Spiritual Beast that came out. Ritual Beast, I mean. It's an engine for Plasma. And third place, Zeta with Sealed Tombs, Black Wings. Similar to the second place deck. You've got some of the cards, 2 Black Whirlwinds instead of 3. Offerings to the Doom, Treacherous Trap Hole, those are all his choices there. Pinaki the Waxing Moon is back in the deck. It's pretty much a mixing of the monsters. You have your core monsters. You still have 3 Simoon the Poison Wind. You have 3 Chris the Crack of Dawn. Those are pretty core. Throw in as many Gales as you have. Zephyros the Elite is seeing play. Borrow the Spears here if you have it. Erosia Squall is pretty much a core card. So, it's playing around with what tuners you like, what monsters you like, of course, and which ones you can afford. So, as a result of the Kaiba Cup, Duel Links Meta has updated their tier list. Element Saber Invoked are the sole tier 1 deck. They could beat anything right now. Tier 2, we have Black Wings, Dark Lords, and Roid Invoked. So Black Wings and Dark Lords have fallen. Dark Lords were the main Tier 1 for a bit, and they've fallen, I think, mainly due to their low representation in the Kaiba Cup. Black Wings, it's debatable whether they're Tier 1 or Tier 2. They could easily show you that they're Tier 1 deck. I think it's because they didn't take first place in the KC Cup, but it's hard to say that they probably have a worse matchup against Element Sabers, so that's why they're in Tier 2. But they could easily move into Tier 1 with a good week. And Roids have shown up as a Tier 2 deck. They're probably your best bet to play if you're a budget player, because if you have the Invoked package already, the Roids you should have already, so pretty strong deck to ladder with. I might try that next month, which is tomorrow. Tier 3, we have Pure Invoked and Ritual Beasts. Pure Invoked isn't that strong because you have to set up the play with Black Rose Dragon. So it's all about Scrap Goblin surviving that turn. Kind of like a two-step thing. If they interrupt a step, you're kind of screwed in the synchro summoning. And then they removed Amano Stun and Cristrons. Amano Stun got nerfed, so I guess that's moving forward. You can't play it anymore. Cristrons can still be sneaky good, I think. Alright, so let's talk about skill rebalancing. It's kind of weird how they came about to this. Some skills were nerfed and some weren't. It's possible, of course, that they set it up ahead of time, that you would know they were planning to do these things, because some of these were not as a result of the Kaiba Cup, but I think some of them were. So some of them was letting a certain deck play for a certain time, and others were a response to the Kaiba Cup. First skill up is Kaiba Corp Bling. They say the skill is too versatile. They're increasing its utility in a different direction. And what they're doing is your dual assessment score will be, for using Glossy and Prismatics, will be multiplied by 1.5. It can be used when your life points decrease by 2,000, and then you draw your random Glossy or Prismatic card. So, as the Dual Assessment podcast, I must say we like this skill. Just kidding, it's dead. Increases your dual assessment score, sure, but then the skill's kind of dead. You have to trigger 2,000 life point loss. The first thing that comes to mind is Mirror Wall or Champion's Vigilance, cards that cost 2,000, and that's kind of a steep cost, especially in this meta. This is a hit for Dark Lords. It's their main skill right now. They moved on from Beatdown to Kaiba Corp Bling, and now this is nerfed. And it really did hit whales. I think this is a skill that this nerf really hit whales, because they were the ones who were probably fishing through boxes multiple times to get a Glossy or Prismatic UR. You can't upgrade those cards. So, yeah, they're going to have to find new skills. Probably Tie That Binds at this point, which is just a 300-point boost. Yeah, Kaiba Corp Bling is probably out of the competitive meta. Dual Standby. Each player's starting hand increases by 1. You cannot normal summon or activate card effects on your first turn. So this is what kills Amano Stun. Amano Stun is done with this nerf. Of course, they could play a different skill other than Dual Standby, but it was their main skill. They can't play it a monster on their first turn, so the deck loses all meaning. It loses its Raison d'etre, as I said. You could survive with Kite Roid or other stall cards, but you'll be playing behind because you lose that first summon. You're going to be behind the whole game, so Amano Stun is done. One card wonder got nerfed. Your starting hand will only contain one card. During the duel, your normal draw 2. It'll only activate when your deck has no other monsters other than dark monsters. So, the skill wasn't used a ton, frankly, but you did see it in an unfun stall deck that probably ran things like Lava Golem or Fortress Warrior and Kite Roid. So now you can only play dark monsters. Lava Golem's Fire, Fortress Warrior's Earth, Kite Roid's Wind. I don't think you can stall them out with a dark monster deck. Unless you just run those sphere Karibos, I guess. That's one way to do it, but sphere Karibo's fine. It's worse than Kiteroid. Or Lava Golem, so. There is that nerf. We can't really say that took over the Kaiba Cup at all. It was just a deck that existed, that no one really played, but then when you played against it, you wanted to throw your phone off the bridge or something, but what happened? Now we have some skills that got buffed, and these just could happen whenever. I think there was no reason to buff these skills, but they decided to increase the play of some dual skills, and I'm fine with that. Reinforcements. This is the one that lets you draw a warrior monster. It moves from an 1800 point activation to 1500, so a little less steep. When you're running 1,000 life point cards like Cosmic Cyclone, it doesn't really matter, but 1500 is an important cutoff point because it lets you run one card called Herald of the Abyss. And Herald of the Abyss is a card I like a lot. I use it in my Invoked deck, and you send one monster to the graveyard. You declare a type and attribute, and then your opponent sends it to the graveyard. So you avoid targets, you avoid protections, you avoid things like that. And then 1500 lets you activate the skill. So this is a buff for warrior decks. Silent Duelist got buffed. So there's no change in the life point activation. It's still 1800. But it lets you play Silent Swordsman level 3 instead. So then it was previously just like a Silent Magician skill. Now it includes Silent Swordsman, which makes sense. Silent Swordsman was nerfed. It was very unfun, I think, to play against. And the skill change probably doesn't do much because they probably didn't run the Silent Swordsman level 3s. They just ran the one you got, the 1000 you got from the box. So, like Silent Magicians didn't run the level 4s. They just existed with the 1000 card. And I think there is more hope, though. This does help Silent Swordsman more than Silent Magician because Silent Swordsman was a dedicated deck. They kind of combined it with Red Eyes, I think, sometimes, but Silent Magician is not a dedicated deck. It's a mercenary in a deck where you just run spellcasters. It's a good card to put in a spellcaster deck, but Silent Swordsman can exist as its own deck, but it's still nerfed, so hard to say if it will see any play. Miracle Fusion time got buffed, so went from 2,000 life point loss to 1,000. This is a big change for this deck because, 2,000 life point loss buff, activation, pretty much, who's going to do it. I guess it's hard to say this because Bandit requires you to lose 2,500, and I just got King of Games with Bandit Vampires, but the point of stealing your opponent's back row is just super strong. You have to lose 2,500. Anyways, Miracle Fusion time's just 1,000 now. So, easily Cosmic Cyclone works. And you get Miracle Fusion. So Elemental Hero Fusions will always live behind the shadow of Newest Fusion. Newest Fusion is just so much better because you can summon from the deck, the materials from the deck instead. That prevents consistency issues with cards being in your hand. But this lets you play, those various Elemental Hero Fusions. I think they're called Omni monsters, where it's just a certain attribute, like an effect monster and an attribute monster. And then you can make Great Tornado, you can make Gaia, Nova Master, The Shining, Escura Dao, things like that. And this could be a lead-in for Invoked decks when Sorcery Conduit gets unbuffed. I think something has to be done to nerf Invoked, and Sorcery Conduit might get hit again. It's hard hitting a skill that you just buffed, but it might be the only way to do it. And because Element Heroes have various elements, obviously, they could be a fit with Invoked decks. There might be something there. This skill might have a hand as being the new skill for Invoked decks. I'm not sure. And finally, Respect My Authority. The Trudge skill didn't get buffed. Nothing really changed. They just changed the wording of the skill. So no real change there. It's probably going to remain not seeing play. So that is it for those skill rebalancing. Duel Tournament is going on right now. It's going to end in 2 days. They just opened up the special cup so you could play through that and get the gems, because it's all gem reward for the special cup. Make sure you do everything, get all the rewards from it. There's 2 new cards from this event. One thing that was funny, I mean, this is always like a way to be funny, Tag Duel Tournament, because they pair 2 people up randomly. I like the one where Pero was teamed up with Strings. It's just like they just got a random bald dude and he thought he was doxed, and then he got through the whole duel with him. He didn't realize who he was until the end. Kind of hilarious. We still can't play Strings, but it's nice to have him as a side character for these Tag Duel events. Yeah. So, let's see. Tag Duel Tournament. New card, Violon Prism. You are Light level 4, Thunder Tuner, 1500. If this card is sent from the monster zone to the graveyard, you can pay 500 life points. Then target one face-up monster you control. Equip this card to that target. If this equipped monster attacks or is attacked, gains 1,000 life points during the damage step only. Not the worst tuner. Violon tuners are slow typically. There's no quick way of getting a monster out or a material out, so that's why Violons aren't a meta deck. But this doesn't have to be a Violon card. It could just work as a tuner, as an all-purpose tuner. And basically what happens is your Synchro monster gets a hidden 1000 attack boost. Your opponent's not paying attention. They could hit into it and it's like, oops, you got 1000 attack more because this guy's equipped to you. And it's important because there was like a cutoff where 3000 attack was meta when Blue Eyes and Ancient Gears were very meta. You had to get over 3000 attack. That's kind of less the case now after the nerf to Beatdown. The Dark Lords, you have to get over the Dark Lords or whatever. Now it's more getting over the Black Wings, how much attack they have, or getting over Invoked Magellanica, which is, you probably want to get over 4000 because Alistair's in hand with 3000. So this Violon Prism giving a monster 1000 attack, it's not nothing. And of course the attribute has to line up. This isn't useful in Invoked because they have no use for a light monster as their tuner, but in certain decks this could see a fit because 1000 attack is nothing to sneeze at this point, especially if they nerf things like Concentrating Current. Maybe it could see some play. Dark Archetype is the other new card, level 4 Dark Spellcaster, 1400 attack, 400 defense. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one monster from your deck with attack less than or equal to the battle damage you took. This is a floater. It gets destroyed, and then you could float something out with 0 attack. When you take damage with this card, it's inconsistent. You don't know what you're going to get. So you could always get something out of 0 attack when it's destroyed defense. This is a new tool for Yubel decks, as they mentioned, because Yubel has 0. But then can also open up play for a lot of cards. There's a lot of cards with 0 attack. And they don't have to be a dark monster, so any monster of 0 attack. It relies on battle destruction, which is a bit of a crutch in this meta, but I think the versatility of this being a floater is pretty good. There's a lot of monsters with 0 attack, as I mentioned. So now, let's talk about the 2 new cards from Alexis' event, the second time of Alluring Alexis. Some new Cyber Angel support. We'll see how much it does for them. Cyber Tutubon, level 5, Earth Warrior, 1800 attack, 1600 defense. You can special summon this card from your hand by tributing one warrior or fairy monster from your hand or field. If this card is tributed for a ritual summon, you can target one ritual spell card in your graveyard and add it to your hand. This does a little bit for ritual summon. It's a free summon, of course, so it costs a monster in hand. So, sometimes you could just play Senju, for example, and then you could attribute the Senju for this card. So it's not that bad for that reason. if it's used for a ritual summon, you can get a ritual spell back, so you can recoup the card you just used. This specifically works for Machine Angel Ritual, the card that's semi-limited. Why? Because the stars are awkward on this card. It's level 5. And the Cyber Angels typically are 6s and 8s as the ritual monsters. They only are 6s and 8s. So you would have to line up the stars well. Of course, 6 plus 2 is what's done a lot with the Cyber Petite Angels, so that's what goes on there. And Machine Angel Absolute Ritual needs you to have the exact number of stars. Sprite's Blessing requires the same number of stars, but Machine Angel Ritual is the one that lets you exceed the number. And that is where Cyber Tutupan comes into play, because the 5 is awkward when forming a level 8 monster. Where's the level 3 going to come from? So, this is useful in that regard, in letting you recycle Machine Angel Ritual, but then it's awkward because you have to have that one card in hand, and you're not going to not run Dakini to have 2 copies of Machine Angel Ritual, right? You're going to have 1 copy of Machine Angel Ritual, 1 copy of Dakini in the deck. So Cyber Tutuban is awkward in that it needs Machine Angel Ritual. And that's the only card it needs. It probably won't see play in Cyber Angels, frankly, but if it does, it would be, the purpose of getting Machine Angel Ritual back. But when you get it back from the graveyard, it's not going to protect your monsters, right? So there's a give or take here. There's like a thing here. And then the other card is Magnificent Machine Angel. These names are really clunky. Anyways, quick play spell, tribute 1 Cyber Angel Ritual monster from your hand or field, then target 1 Light Fairy monster you control. Gains attack and defense equal to the level of the monster when tributed times 200 until the end of the turn. This turn, if it battles an opponent's monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, the opponent's monster effects are negated during that battle phase only. You can only use once per turn. So this is a quick play spell, right? So that means you can play it from your hand. That's the main advantage of being a quick play, as opposed to being set and activated like a trap card. So the Cyber Angels, right? Level 6 for Ben 10, level 8 for Izana. That would be 1200 attack or 1800 attack. Very good. 1600 attack. Very big buff. And, in this meta, it's important to get over those monsters as mentioned. So it's important to get over anything with the Invoked meta with Alistair in hand, or even Concentrating Current. So this helps in every regard for that. It's pretty useful for Dakini too, when you have Dakini on board, and then you could do piercing on the defense monsters with all your monsters, so it's going to let you kill someone pretty fast. The secondary ability, where you negate the effect of the extra deck, isn't too useful, unless, Fortune Ladies are meta. Fortune Lady, if you negate their effects, they become 0 Fortune Lady every, so that pretty much loses them the game. But Fortune Ladies are in a very bad spot right now, so not too applicable at the moment. That's it for Alexis. Card Trader Inventory Update. We can obtain as many copies as we want of Gen X Ally Chemister. This is a card I already have 3 of from the Select a Gift campaign, I think. And it's a little more applicable now because Invoked are all about attributes. And this lets you change the attribute of a monster by discarding it, and that can let you allow Gen X to be played with Invoked. But the fact that this costs a card, this cost itself to change an attribute, makes me think that Gen X are not desirable to be an Invoked deck. It's hard to say, what is and what, because Invoked allows the play of any archetype, but the fact that it costs a card to change an attribute makes it seem a little too clunky for me, so I'd say no here. But, who cares, right? An extra card for the card trader or whatever. So that is it for the update there, and that is it for this episode. Upcoming news, we got a word of Rex Goodwin's event, so the Weira Kaka Raska event, raid duels are coming. That's the next event, probably by Monday or Tuesday. Duel Quest is going on. Leo and Luna's Duel Carnival with Jester's Panic and Jester's Queen. Blair Flanagan appearance, Maiden in Love and Cupid's Kiss. Dark Signer Carly Carmine event, again with new cards and new skills. Maybe Fortune Ladies can come back. Late December, Duelist Chronicles 5Ds. First Duelist Chronicles for 5Ds. And then finally, late December, Duel Circuit and the new SR Pilgrim of the Ice Barrier. That's it for the podcast. You can check out the podcast anywhere of your favorite podcast devices and listen and subscribe. Check out the podcast and more at the website, theduelassessment.wordpress.com. Email theduelassessment@gmail.com, or you find me on Twitter, duel_assessment, or me at Green Ranger CCG. So that is it for the week. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.